There it be. I found it. Hello and welcome to the writing stream. I'm still getting used to this new computer. Not everything is where it used to be, which is very confusing. Particularly all the USBs, B stuffs and things. But anyway, there we go. I think we're working. Welcome back. To Monday. It is Drew's Day again, and if you're wondering why does he keep looking over there? Because that's where the other monitor is now, over there. You see, my main monitor is here, and it's so big that I've had to move the other monitor over there, which is a bit confusing at the moment. So I'm probably going to have to tweak this around a bit, because in order to look at the chat, I'm going to have to go over there. It's just really. It's really very good for interaction, is it? So, how is the PC? The PC is very good. Getting everything kind of where I want it to go is not so easy at the moment. So yeah, so it's a bit it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird. So if I'm looking to kind of to the right, I suppose, is that there? Because it's mirrored. It's very confusing. Because as far as I'm concerned, that's left, and this is right. Okay, but as far as you're concerned, well, I'm looking. Right, I'm looking at my monitor, which is on the left. Does that help? Anyway, you get to see a lot of my right here. So yes, I will check the chat, and as I'm checking the chat, I'll be looking over and I can just see my head's transparent as well, so that's not good. So there's things to be tweaked as per usual. Stage left, which is definitely that way. No, stage left. Yeah, that would be stage. I don't know. Never understood those things anyway. But never mind. We are here. Well, at least we're streaming. We're in 60 FPS. Ooh. Which is going to make a massive difference to you guys. Because, yeah, we're looking at a browser window for most of the evening. Stage left is my left. Okay, so that's stage left. Okay, where the chat is. That's stage left. Dear, never mind. Anyway, we must do the thing, because the thing is the thing, and the thing must be done. Well, I've got to scroll the chatty thing back up to the top. Find out who's here. Right, who do we have in the chat? Arrakis! We have the Arrakises in the chat. Waiting, fending off the invasion of the Harkonnens as ever. Winterbeat GB is here. Of course he is. Mad Monksoft is here. Boys! Wikipedia as ever. What's this about Roald Dahl? Roald Dahl can't have done something because he's obviously dead. But... So, you need to explain yourself, Mad Monksoft. I'm confused. The Harkonnens are here, ready to invade Arrakis. Which is good. Good to see you guys. Frank Miner 29, 49er is here. Mac Verrig is here. Short 59 North TB is here as well. Commander Sea Dweller is here with the Womble Brigade. Commander JR 1980 here as well. Alan is here. And has got information on different versions of the book that we're talking about this evening. Or for the next few weeks actually as well. So that's quite good. Commander Treasure Blue 21 is here. Have a Boo Boo is here as well. Glenn is here as well. The sound is working, yay! Which is all good. So welcome one and welcome all to the writing stream, and we continue. Well, we start actually our exploration of. Do you know what? I'm going to try and put this over here. See if this works better for me, because it's going to be very, very, very weird. I've got this super duper new monitor, which is very impressive. But the problem with streaming is. That feels a bit more natural. I think I'm used to putting the chat over there. That's the problem, and it's a bit weird not having it in the right place. Anyway, we'll figure our way around that one. That feels better, but I don't know how that's going to work with the streaming in a minute. We'll find out. Maybe I can adjust things and tweak things about. See how it goes. But there we go. Anyway, so. Roald Dahl. Okay, so what's going on? How many waffles per second is 60 frames per second? It's a lot of waffle. Roald Dahl's books are being censored for offensive language. Are they? I didn't even know there was any offensive language in Roald Dahl books. Can't say I've read one recently, but Roald Dahl. I mean, it's a children's author, isn't he? You've not read the news today, then? Roald Dahl's books are being woke, okay, rewritten by their publishers. See. Well, let's take our first segue of the evening. I find this one difficult. I do find this one difficult because books are a product of their time and their author, right? And I mean, when did Roald Dahl die? What was he? I'm just going to look him up. Because we need to know. I haven't read the news. Okay, let me read maybe I should read the news first, because What's happened? What's happened to Roald Dahl in the news? What's Roald Dahl? Is it on the BBC or? Okay, so Rishi Sunak, our Prime Minister, has joined criticism, apparently, of these things. He died in 1990. It's not that old, okay. Right, hang on. Let me switch to this mode. Let's see, see if this works. Screen plus camera. Look, I've got a bit of Twitch going on. It's a bit of a mess, this streaming log. Let me put this back over here. That's better. Although I'm going to be looking in the wrong direction, but I'll figure it out. Give me a chance. I'll figure it out. Okay, so Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has criticised changes to Roald Dahl books after removal of some references to things like characters' appearance and weight sparked a fierce debate. Okay, so it's not like swear words then. So what words have they taken out? What has changed? Here we go. There we go. Augustus Gloop from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is now described as enormous, with the word fat removed from every book. Really? Mrs. Twit from the Twits is no longer ugly and beastly, but simply beastly. Okay. In the same book, a weird African language is no longer weird. The words like crazy and mad have been removed as a result of an emphasis on mental health. A threat to knock her flat in Matilda has become give her right talking to. References to colours have also changed. The BFG's coat is no longer black, while Mary in the BFG now goes as still as a statue instead of white as a sheet. Yeah. Dear oh dear. That is silly, isn't it? Let's be honest. That is just silly. I don't understand the reasoning for this. Okay, the word fat is fat, right? I suppose this is all to do with making. I don't know. I don't know how to interpret this, because I mean I kind of understand. There's a level to this. I kind of understand it when it comes to, certain things, that would not be acceptable to say today that are still printed in a book. But if a book is that old that they are in it, they are authentic to the period in which they were written, and you can't just expunge history because it's uncomfortable. You have to kind of look at it and go, okay, well, that was written in the 1960s, or that was written in the 1930s, or that was written in 1850, or whatever it happens to be, right? And it's a product of its time, okay? We have different standards today. I think that's entirely fine. Maybe put a disclaimer in the front of the book for a new version, right? But don't change the text. I think it's so wrong to change the text, because you're destroying the originality of the book. I mean, if in 100 years' time somebody, for some bizarre reason, takes exception to, I don't know, something in Shadewood that I've written, and then changes it, I'd be annoyed. Okay, who the hell are you to decide what the word should be? That's what I wrote. I'm the author. You can't go mucking about. It's. I think it's wrong. I would be happy with a disclaimer, and then, even then, a disclaimer doesn't really need to be there if you're halfway intelligent, right? Because it's like, okay, so Drew Wager wrote this book in 2011, and standards were very different to how they are now in the year 2096 or whatever it happens to be. Okay, it's a product of its time. If we alter history, then how can you possibly learn from it? How can you have a reference document? Okay, that you go back and go, okay, well, yeah, I can see why that was wrong, or I can see why standards were different then, because I can see it in the literature of the time. You're altering history to suit modern day sensibilities. So, it's wrong. It is. That's my humble opinion. I don't know what you guys think, but I think it's wrong. I really do think it's wrong, and it's not exactly. I mean, fat, for goodness sakes. People are fat. Some people are thin. What are they going to do next? Are they going to edit the? Are they going to edit the railway stories by Thomas the Tank Engine and remove the Fat Controller, or is he already gone? I don't know. Somebody tell me. Is there still a Fat Controller in Thomas the Tank Engine? So yeah, I mean, fat is a perfectly valid description. Big ears and noddy. Yeah, I know. Oh dear. But yeah, I would not necessarily say, okay, maybe you shouldn't. Should you give those older books to children now? I don't know. Can't wait until they update the Bible. Just because the Bible is full of really dodgy stuff. I mean, it's always held up. The Bible is like this, like many other religious books. I mean, they can't really single out the Bible for this, but take the Bible because I'm more familiar with it. It's supposedly, many people believe it sincerely to be the inspired word of God, right? As sort of given to us through various prophets and other people. But there's incest in there, there's murder, there's genocide, you name it, it's in the Bible. It's like, okay, but I think we should change that. It's like you can't change the Bible. If we change history to make it more palatable to us now, we're losing the whole point of history. It's like, yes, bad stuff happened in the past and bad stuff is happening today, right? But if we airbrush it out, we won't. We can't point it and go, okay, well that's why it was bad, or that's why things have changed since, or it became a big issue in the 2020s not to talk about people in that certain way because it wasn't fair, or it made people uncomfortable, it made people have mental health issues, etc., etc., etc. I mean, I know the Bible was changed, yeah. It's like, and the old books are still there, but it's odd, this weirdness. Sunak's spokesman said works of fiction should be preserved and not airbrushed. I tend to agree. I mean, I don't really want to put my mark next to the Conservatives or Rishi Sunak, to be honest, but I agree with him on this one. Preserved, yeah. It's okay. It's a product of its time. When did Roald Dahl write those? He's recently died. So that's what the author wrote. Leave it alone. Who the hell are you to decide that it's not appropriate? Nowadays that's just silly. Good news, right? Yeah. Mad Monk's author's got the quote from Red Dwarf, which says, "We found a new page of the Bible, carbon dated, goes at the beginning. To my darling Candy." All characters portrayed within this book are fictitious. Resemblance persons to living dead is entirely coincidental. That's my opinion. Augustus Gloop. The whole point of Augustus Gloop in that story was that he was grossly overweight. Okay, he ate a lot of chocolate, as I recall, and he was fat. I mean, he was. That's how you describe people like that. And the irony is Gloop is still presented as bad for being fat, which was kind of, I mean, Roald Dahl was a slightly curious guy, right? He basically went to extremes, didn't he? So Augustus Gloop was fat. What were the other characters? There was the girl who turned into a blueberry. I remember her. That was quite funny. She was just obnoxious from what I could recall. Grandpa Joe was the sort of So I don't know. And clothes in BFG. Okay, so why can't his cloak be black? I mean, come on, unpack. We know why they've changed it, but I mean, you can't. It's just not right. Interesting comment here. Actually, his Dark Materials author, Philip Pullman, whose books I don't like actually. Philip Pullman. Said told Radio 4, that bastion of traditional English conservatism with a small c, Dahl's books should be allowed to fade away rather than be changed if they're deemed offensive. I tend to agree with that as well. If it's written, Yeah. If Dahl offends us, let him go out of print, said Pullman. Read all these other wonderful authors who are writing today and don't get as much of a look in because some matter of commercial gravity of people like Roald Dahl. So it's all about the money, isn't it? They're trying. What it is actually at the end of the day, it's probably not even a battle about censorship. It's probably a battle about, okay, well, can we make more money flogging a dead author's books? Yes, but if we remove all the words that might upset people nowadays. But poet, so here's another person. Poet and author Debjani Chatterjee believes it's a very good thing that the publisher are reviewing his work. She told the BBC they think they've done quite sensitive. Take the word fat. They've used enormous. If anything, I think enormous is even funnier. Yeah, but the publisher changing the author's work. What? That's not acceptable. So I think it's money. I suspect it's probably money. But anyway, there we go. Okay, well that's interesting. that's my thinking. But anyway, okay. Well that was yeah. Oh, I'm fired up now. That was a good segue. Don't change any of my books. Okay, I'm gonna put that in my will actually. If a publisher decides after my death to change my books, I'm going to be jolly annoyed. Okay. So yeah, it's vent waffle. That's exactly what it was, a vent waffle. We'll come back to get you. I will. I shall write a stiffly worded letter from beyond the grave. Very polite, but stiffly worded. So they aren't spending money on editing out of genuine conservatives. Well, Haunted Level, I think that's the point, isn't it? It's commercialism. This is the problem. We can make more money out of this if we update it. So we're going to update it. Because then nobody will get offended by it. But can we edit them in 100 years when your English is no longer comprehensible? No! I will quite happily sit here and critique poor old Jules Verne by the standards of modern English, right? But yeah, would absolutely not edit him after his death. Talon Cora drew away with sports car stream when I don't know about a sports car stream. It'd be quite difficult to get this PC and lug it around in a computer, but in the car. But I will definitely be doing some YouTube videos. We have got some track days and other stuff coming. I'm just waiting for slightly better weather to start doing some more filming. So yeah, that'd be quite good. Yes. Would have been nice. Enid Blyton. Now, Enid Blyton is another one. Enid Blyton. For those of you, some of you may not know Enid Blyton. Enid Blyton wrote. Those in the UK. Talon Tora. Will I see you on the first Sunday of the month? Yes, probably. We were there last week actually. Whatever that was it? Yeah, a few weeks back. So fingers crossed. Yes, depending which car's working. So yes, that'd be good. So Enid Blyton is an interesting one. She wrote the Famous Five and the Secret Seven and probably some other stuff as well. Voyages to the Faraway Tree, is that right? To defend changing Fanny's name. Well, there's also some names are a bit weird, but Fanny was, and it still makes us chuckle now, of course, because it was funny back in the 70s and 80s when we learned to read. But okay, so Talon Cora, you are Graham with a blue mark too. Excellent. MX5 forever. Excellent stuff. Always like funny podcast, don't we all? Yeah. Dear. But cheap jokes. Keep them coming, guys. Keep them coming. We will get around to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea at some point. There are some. I mean, there was a character in Arthur Ransom's Swallows and Amazons, which everybody's heard of, and most people have seen the film. But the youngest girl, as I recall, was called Titty or something. It's like that's not a word. You can't do that now. So I don't know whether they've changed that in modern translations of Arthur Ransom's Swallows and Amazons. So yes, we did have some funny English names. But of course, at the time, I mean, these books were written just post the Second World War, weren't they? And the names were different, right? They just were, and yeah, they might be funny by modern standards, but they weren't funny at the time. At least probably not that funny. So yeah, changing some things are weird. Gonna go and play some MechWarrior now. Catch you later, no worries. see you at our future car meet. All my worlds combining here. It's really good. Yeah, pussy galore for goodness sakes for James Bond. There's no way they didn't do that deliberately, surely. So yeah, so there are some. So yeah, in the US, fanny means buttocks. It doesn't mean that in the it doesn't mean that in the UK. 100 miles away, but it doesn't mean that in the UK. So it's yeah. Very, very strange. Anyway, but yeah, so there are some things that, you know, yeah, I don't know, but I don't like all the censorship stuff. I find it quite annoying. But yeah, so Enid Blyton. Sorry, getting back to the point. Enid Blyton was very much in vogue for quite a long time. But when I was reading her stuff in the 70s as a young child, to be fair to Enid Blyton, the books that started me reading, suddenly realising as a young child that reading was a fun thing, right? A fun thing that you could do, and you could go and have adventures and read stuff, and it was exciting. Enid Blyton, Famous Five. Okay. Okay. Now her stories are very, very, cliched. They're always the same, basically. It's just slightly different mystery. So the Famous Five was basically four. I think is it four kids and a dog? I think it's the. I'm trying to remember now. Four kids and a dog basically go around solving mysteries that the police can't figure out. Okay, that's basically what the Famous Five was. And I can't remember the characters. I think is it Julian and George. Julian is a boy. George was a kind of tomboy girl. Then there was a younger boy and a younger girl, and a dog. I can't. Was the dog called George? I thought the girl was called George. Georgina, but everyone called her George because she didn't like. So maybe she's an early trans character or something like that. I'm sure that's not what Enid Blyton intended, but who knows? She was what was used to be called a tomboy. I don't even know are you allowed to use the word tomboy anymore? So I can't remember. The Secret Seven, yeah, Mad Monks. I remember the Secret Seven. It was like a cheap knockoff of the Famous Five, as far as I can remember. But anyway, those books were fun. When I was in the 70s reading them as a kid, I thought they were great. Kids go off solving adventures where the adults can't. Basically, the premise of these books was the adults in the world are so dumb they can't solve anything, and the kids have to step in and fix stuff. Basically, that's effectively the premise of the Famous Five and Secret Seven and so on and so forth. So as a kid, that's pretty cool, right? Because adults are dumb. We all knew that adults were dumb, and the kids are super smart because they figure stuff out. That's basically what it is. But dear oh dear, Enid Blyton fell from grace in the 80s, and I don't think she's really ever recovered. The books were banned from schools. In the 80s in the UK, because they were just basically said to be rubbish. They didn't have any literary standing at all. They were absolutely kind of black marked. You don't go anywhere near Enid Blyton, because appalling literary standards. Just everything was wrong with Enid Blyton. So poor Enid Blyton became basically a byword for rubbish. And I suppose today, you look at those books and they are full. Probably, I haven't read them since the 70s. I don't think they're probably full of casual racism and sexism and classism and all sorts of stuff. And they were banned for being racist. So I don't know precisely what was in them that was racist. We could probably identify it if we had a look, but I suppose back in the 70s when I was reading them as a kid, I just read them as kids basically being smarter than adults. Lashings and lashings of ginger beer and custard. I mean, it was very twee British sort of storytelling, I suppose. Maybe that's what it was about. But yeah. So, and there were certainly things in them which I think now you can identify and go, yeah, that's kind of racist. But it was Was it intentionally racist, or was it just because that's how Enid Blyton herself was brought up and that's the environment she lived in? I don't know. That's the debate that can go on and on and on as well. So yeah, so all sorts of things in there. Anyway, okay, well that's interesting. So anyway, it's finally after 26 minutes. We've got plenty of time. We've got the next 4 weeks to go through 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So that's 5,000 leagues a week. I've worked out using my maths. Enid was banned from the BBC in the 1930s, was she? Matt Monks often says he's not racist. He just hates everyone. Dear. So yeah. So anyway, so 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is okay. So that's winding this entire stream back to where we're supposed to be going. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Now I did notice now, and I think Alan mentioned this in a message he sent to me online. And I graciously forgot to answer him. Sorry about that, Alan, because I was a bit busy. There's more than one version of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea on Gutenberg Press. And I've got a copy. I think I showed it to you last week. Let me just get it again. There it is. Because I wanted to compare my copy of the book to what's actually on Gutenberg. So this is, there you go. There's my copy, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Classic Adventures, by Jules Verne. And this is a relatively old one, in the sense the paper's all turned yellow. That's how old it is, and stuff. And it'd be interesting. I'm going to compare bits of the thing, for compared to what we've got online, because there's lots and lots of different versions. Now let's go back a page here, because when you search for 20,000, sorted by popularity. Look, there's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, which has 3,586 downloads, which kind of means it's popular. There's this version which has 960 downloads, and there's another version over there which has 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which only has 51 downloads, and this one here that has 212. So it's like, why is somebody at Project Gutenberg not doing a good translation? Is that the problem? And Alan says, okay, so the first version has loads of issues with the translations. So which one do you actually recommend we go with, Alan? Is it this one here? Which is the one I think I clicked on, just because I recognised the cover as an earlier version of the one that I had. Has 20,000 Leagues been woked? I don't know. We'll find out, won't we? If you choose the mostly downloaded one, you're being bookist. I'm reading the one you have up. This one here. Okay. All right. So let's go with this one, the one that has 960 downloads. Now that's not going to be very helpful because just by clicking on it, I'll change the number of downloads. But I mean, how would you know? You can't really tell in advance which is the correct version. So how do you make that choice? Are there comments on the book? No, there aren't there? So how do you make a choice as to which version? Fish being labelled as fat. We can't have fat fish. Enormous fish. Enormous fish only. There's no correct translation. Well, there isn't, is there? Because of course it's written in French, and I can't read French. Well, I can read a bit of French, but I can't read French well enough to do this. Okay, so that's interesting. Well, there we go. I'm going to go for this one. This is what this is for the purposes of this stream. This is the definitive version as recommended by Alan. There we go. So this one was released in 2001 onto Gutenberg, yeah. How about the French? Yes, okay, but this is a British stream. Sans français, n'est-ce pas? Okay, so this one says translated from the original French by F.P. Walter. Good on him, Frederick Paul Walter, back in 1999. So that's not too bad, and that's based on a complete unabridged translation of 20,000 lieues sans les mers, which is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, by Jules Verne, based on the original French text published in Paris. Okay, so that seems to be that seems to be probably as close as we can get to the original version in a language that we here in the UK and the US, etc., etc., and anybody else watching this stream in English can understand. So let's go with that. The French title of this novel is 20,000 Louis sur la mer. This is accurately translated as 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas, not the sea. As with many English editions, Verne's novel features a tour of the major oceans, and the term leagues in its title is used as a measure not of depth but of distance. Okay, I think most of us knew that, but interesting that seas rather than sea, because of course there were 7 seas, which is a stupid thing, because all seas are obviously connected to each other by the fact they're made of water. But areas of watery areas have got their own sort of names. So there we go. So we have our, as all 19th century novels do, so it seems, we have our list of chapters which give away big key moments in the story before you even get to the story. So the tantrums of Ned Land, everything through electricity. So electricity is coming back. We know there's a thing called the Nautilus. There's some there's all sorts of things. Okay, so we kind of get a feel for where he's going through looking for the chapter headings. And something bad happens at the end, and Captain Nemo is some last word. So we know we get a bit of a feel for the story before we even start. Now these colour plates. I love colour plates. And we can actually jump to them. Look at that. There's the man himself, Jules Verne. No need to read the book. Just look at the chapter headings. Yep. 7 Seas of Rye is a great Queen track. It is. 7 Seas of Rye. Yeah. Maybe we should do a whole stream on pop and rock references in literature. That would be fun. Massive copyright strike straight away, but there we go. Yes, in black and white. I mean, there we go. So interesting enough, what's going on? Okay, that's part of the introduction. So that isn't. Okay, so my book, you can probably see that my book starts just on chapter 1. So this introduction is written by who? Oh, this is actually written by F.P. Watts. So this will bear having a look at then. Drew, do you generally not like chapter titles at all? Or do you think they should be more obscure and not descriptive? I don't like chapter titles because it's kind of like spoilers, isn't it? There are some that are way worse. I mean, these chapter titles at least are short. Okay, so they don't give away too much. The Greek islands. Clearly, that chapter is concerned about what happens when they're touring around the Greek islands. That would be a fairly safe assumption. But it's kind of, it's spoiler territory. Look, there's a chapter there, a pearl worth 10 million. I wonder what happens in that chapter. Do you think perchance that Captain Nemo and his crew happen upon a pearl of great value? I mean, why would you do that? Why can't you just be quite happy with chapter 3? So I don't know. Maybe it's because these were pamphletized. They were published in sections. A lot of these books, they had to kind of hype up. It's almost like the advert for the for the book, isn't it? Okay. Oh, there's going to be a pearl worth 10 million in this something. I don't know. Maybe that's the reason they did this. Some of books of this era are even worse. They'll go. They don't do it here. No, just literally just. Has that naming, but some of them will go chapter 3, a pearl of 10 million, where and then ... in which Captain Nemo finds a pearl of great value buried deep in the ocean. You've completely spoiled the other chapter. You'll find books like that of this era. It's a weird thing. So it could be a side effect of serialization. I wonder if it is. In which case, maybe they should just remove them. But then we're back to editing the original source work, aren't we? So, but it does kind of tell you, it kind of does give away what's going on here. To a degree, which feels like a weakness. Now, before we get on to colour plates. Now, colour plates, for those of you who don't know, what the hell's a colour plate? Why would we need a colour plate in a book? Colour plates is... plates are an old form of photography. Okay, so before digital cameras, right? well, mobile phones and all that sort of stuff. We used to have film cameras. Who remembers film cameras, right? 35mm film cameras, or what were the other ones? The Instamatic cameras. What were they called? Anyway, film cameras, basically, where you would expose a piece of chemically treated plastic, right? And that would, you'd get a negative image of the thing, and then you'd have that developed, and 3 weeks later your photographs would come back. Polaroid, there we go. I knew somebody would remember what it was called. Polaroid cameras did it instantaneously, which was pretty cool for the time. Whereas most cameras, you took pictures and you got So I mean, I haven't got one here, but this. I've got an early digital. There we go. Look, just for fun. There's an early digital SLR camera. Okay, not much use nowadays. Your phone could do way better pictures than this. But in the olden days, this wasn't a digital camera. Okay, at the back here, you'd have a roll of 35mm film, which you'd have to very carefully thread into the camera, wind forward, and then you'd take pictures, and you had like 36 shots per roll of film, I think, from memory. And when you finished that was it. You have to send the film canister off to be processed somewhere, and about 2 weeks later, you get home somebody else's holiday snaps. And if you're very, very, very lucky, you get your own film back. And everything would be overexposed and wouldn't have worked. But so yes, back in the olden days, it was film. Now before film, there were plates. All right. Now plates are basically a metal piece of plate, basically, with some light sensitive chemicals sort of compressed on top of those. And so if you wanted to take a picture, you would expose a plate inside your camera. You take the lens cap off. Everyone had to hold still for 2 minutes, which is incidentally why nobody is smiling in old photographs, because you can't hold a smile for 2 minutes. You had to sit really, really still with a neutral expression on your face, because you could do that for 2 minutes. That's why everybody looks grim in old photographs, right? Because you can't hold a smile for that long. So it's not that everybody in the past, in the black and white days, was grim and life was hard. It's just you can't hold a smile for that long, and that's basically it. So the sensitivity of those things wasn't very good. But a plate was a way of basically it's an early photograph. So that's when you see in old books plates. What they mean is photographs or reproductions of things using plate photographic technology, as opposed to a slightly more modern film technology. Film hadn't quite come along, so that's. So that's where you are. So here we have in here coloured plates, a portrait of the man himself. So that's what Jules Verne actually looked like. You can hold a smile with poisoning. Inside each camera is an imp drawing a book. Yeah, that's definitely how it works. So let's have a look through this introduction. Because this is written by the chap who translated the book in 1999, which isn't that long ago. He says, 24 years ago. The deepest parts of the ocean are totally unknown to us, amidst Professor Aronnax. Now that's a good name, isn't it? Aronnax. In this novel, what goes on in those distant depths? What creatures inhabit or could inhabit those regions 12 or 15 miles beneath the surface of the water? It's almost beyond conjecture. Well, that's true, probably even still today. We don't know much about the floor of the ocean because it's such a difficult place to get there. So there we are, Jules Verne, 1828 to 1905, published the French equivalent of these words in 1869, and little has changed since. So yeah, it's fair enough. We know more about Mars than we know about the oceans, says NASA, which is partly, this guy is basically attributing the success of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to that. So Verne liked the sea. He was a yachtsman. He went on frequent voyages. Excuse me. But the specific stimulus for this novel was an 1865 fan letter. Excellent. From a fellow writer, Madame George Sand. Interesting name. She praised Verne's two earlier novels, 5 Weeks in a Balloon and Journey to the Centre of the Earth, and added, "Soon I hope you'll take us to the ocean depths, your characters travelling in diving equipment perfected by your science and imagination." And thus inspired, Verne created one of literature's great rebels, a freedom fighter who plunged beneath the waves to wage a unique form of guerrilla warfare. So, no spoilers. So Verne's narrative was influenced by the 1863 uprising of Poland against Tsarist Russia. The Poles were quashed with the violence that appalled not only Verne but all of Europe. So I don't even know anything about that. That's a piece of history I need to look up. Verne's Captain Nemo was a Polish nobleman whose entire family had been slaughtered by Russian troops. Okay, so that's a motivation. Nemo builds a fabulous futuristic submarine, the Nautilus, and conducts an underwater campaign of vengeance against his imperialist oppressors. But in the 1860s, France had to treat the Tsar as an ally, and Verne's publisher pronounced the book unprintable. So, poor old Verne. Here we go again. This is kind of censorship here with the, and editing here going on, right? That Verne had to rework its political content, devising new nationalities for Nemo and his great enemy. Information that was only revealed in a later novel, The Mysterious Island, which I don't think I've read. That's interesting. In the present work, Nemo's background remains a dark secret. So he's got a motivation, but we don't know what it is. Verne and Hetzel were in constant conflict, and the book went through multiple drafts, struggles reflected in its working titles over the period, 65 to 68. Early on, it was variously called Voyage Under the Waves, 25,000 Leagues Under the Waters, 20,000 Leagues Under the Waters, and 1,000 Leagues Under the Oceans. Verne arguing with his publisher, what's the damn book going to be called? Verne is often dubbed, as in Asimov's phrase, the world's first science fiction writer. Well, we've argued about that, haven't we, a little bit with dear old Mary Shelley with Frankenstein. And it's true, many of his 60-odd books do anticipate future events and technologies, from the Earth to the Moon and space travel, Earth's core, and some other bits and pieces. Other stuff doesn't really qualify as sci-fi. Around the World in 80 Days is maybe not sci-fi. Sorry, what did I say? It was Shelley, wasn't it? Mary Shelley. So these observations apply here. The subtitle of the present book is An Underwater Tour of the World. And we'll find out about some of these other bits and pieces as we go through. Subtleties occur with each episode. So, I mean, the translator's a fan of his work, which is good. So that's quite nice. And so on and so forth. There's a few things that, technicalities it gets wrong, unsurprisingly, for a novel that's this old. And lastly, the book has a stature as a novel. Now, this interests me. This interests me a lot. Even the supporting cast is shrewdly drawn. Professor Aronnax, the career scientist, caught in an ethical conflict. Nice. That's good for character conflict. Consul, I don't know how you pronounce it. Consul. The compulsive classifier who gives humorous taglines for Verne's Fast Facts, and the harpooner Ned Land, who's a Canadian. Yes. A creature of constant appetites. Man is a heroic animal. But much of the novel's brooding power comes from Captain Nemo, inventor, musician, and Renaissance genius. He's just a super smart kind of guy. But he's a weird kind of guy. We'll get to know him a bit as we read on through. He's a fighter for freedom, but anybody who comes on board the ship is a prisoner. He lays claim to things, but doesn't like imperialism and so on and so forth. We'll find out about what happens to him in a moment. For many, then, this book has been a source of fascination. Surely one of the most influential novels ever written. Okay, and inspirations for such scientists and discoverers as engineer Simon Lake, oceanographer William Beebe, polar traveller Sir Ernest Shackleton, Ballard, and so on and so forth. So the present translation is a faithful yet community rendering of the original French text published in Paris in 1871. And an interesting little observation here right at the end, because as the time covers suggest, we still haven't caught up with Verne. Even in our era of satellite dishes and video games, the seas keep their secrets. Sailors and scientists say nothing of tourists have yet to voyage in a submarine with the luxury and the efficiency of the Nautilus. Cool. Well, we'll find out a bit more about the Nautilus as we go along. A few measurements. So this is reassuring. Because he uses these things because they were commonplace terminology. I quite like the fact that this is in the book. A cable length okay, is a nautical measurement, right? It's about 600 feet long. Okay, so interesting. He's talking about centigrade here. I'm wondering if this is for an American audience, because in Europe we use centigrade all the time. So, and I think in the US you're still using Fahrenheit for reasons of no idea what you guys are doing, right? Come on. It's like, why is the US still using imperial measurements? It's like, come on, you crazy colonials, what are you doing? A fathom is 6 feet. Okay, so a fathom sounds like a hell of a lot, actually, doesn't it? But it's not. It's only about 6 feet. It's fathoms down. Oh, well, 6 feet down then. Yeah, okay. A gram. Okay, so we're honouring the king. Which king are you honouring, Glenn? Knot was defined as the number of knots on the rope that goes by. Yeah, so this annoyed me. The use of imperial metric units throughout the book in the same tense. Okay, is that maybe that's a translation issue? I thought Jules Verne would have only stuck with one set of units. I like this. A gram is roughly a 28th of an ounce. How roughly is that? A milligram is roughly 1/28,000th of an ounce. Okay, hope for the American audience this is all becoming very, very clear. A kilogram is roughly 2.2 pounds. He is right, actually. To be honest, I have some sympathy for this, because I grew up in the 70s when we were still getting to grips with metric stuff in the UK. In fact, there are still quite a lot of bits and pieces in the UK that don't work, that are still imperial. For example, all our speed limits in the UK are in miles per hour. So, you know, the speed limit on the motorway, for example, is 70 miles per hour. It's not 112 kilometres per hour, because reasons. That's about the only place where we still do. So you can still, I think you can still buy a pint of beer in a UK pub. And I know that I'm 5'10" tall. I've got no idea how tall I am in meters. But in everything that's important to actually be accurate in, we use metric, right? Except where we don't. So we're very, very inconsistent here in the UK. Most of Europe is entirely metric now. Whereas I think in the US, you haven't got any metric at all, from what I can work out. So it's not a translation. It is how it's written. That's interesting. So there we go. Anyway, so this causes all sorts of problems. So I'll do my best. Okay, so it sounds like we're going to have an interesting mix of metrics and things. But there are a whole bunch of imperial measures here, like fathoms and cables and knots and leagues and things, that none of us use anyway, if we are using imperial measurements. So it's confusing stuff. I do like the way it's roughly, though. A hectare, roughly 2.5 acres. Okay, a knot is roughly 1.15 miles per hour. A league in Verne's context. This one was interesting, because I always thought a league was about 3 miles, but according to the context here, it's not. It's 2.6 miles. So I don't know. A litre, and by the way, that's not. There's an American influence coming back in here. That's not how you spell litre, by the way. It's roughly 1 quart. Okay, I have no idea what a quart is, although I know it's roughly 1 litre. And the metre is roughly 1 yard, 3 inches. Okay, so it's kind of similar. I think you could read the rest of it. A micrometre, though, look at that. I mean, what's that? I've never heard of that. A micrometre, roughly 6.2 miles. Is that like 10 kilometres then? A micrometre. Anyway, so units of measurement. Knots are still used on ships in aircraft. You're quite right, Sean. They are. So if you're going so many knots. 4 cups and a quart. What? How much is a cup? That's that much, isn't it? Dear. Yeah, science Brits go at metric and at the market. It's weird, isn't it? I mean, all this stuff is it's funny. Anyway, so there we go. So the first part. Right, let's after 50 minutes, let's get to the book. Ta-da! Welcome to Pt1. Well, this is the funny thing with you guys and being an international audience. It's fun to look at all the different ways we do stuff. So I'm pleased here, but the version of I've got here is not the same as what's up here. So, for example, this says Chapter 1, a runaway reef. My book says a floating reef, so it's instantly different, the translation. And it says up there, the year 1866 was marked by a bizarre development, an unexplained and downright inexplicable phenomena that surely no one has forgotten. This isn't what mine says. Mine says, in the year 1866, the whole maritime population of Europe and America was excited by a mysterious and inexplicable phenomenon. So the translation is is definitely a thing that's going to totally change the style of the book. So it's going to be interesting. True is the wrong book. It's funny. So the translation, because it's originally a French novel, the translation is a big deal in this. The introduction says the Moody Moomin. Hello, Moody Moomin. Good to see you. Have I got any mods, Drew? You're getting bot attacked by Wisebot. No, Wisebot is my bot. It's a friendly bot. That's one of ours. It's a good bot. Okay. Wisebot is a good bot. Which is I don't know, it probably hasn't become self-aware or anything yet, so it's okay. Don't worry about the Wisebot. It's okay. It should be renamed. It's not so Wisebot. No, it did have a proper name, but it lost its name somewhere along the Wisebot. So it's a good bot. Have a treat. Have a battery. That's what you give it in No Man's Sky. Anyway, right. I think it was called. I can't remember. I'd given it a name, but I can't remember what it was. But never mind. Anyway, it's okay. we like big bots, so we can't lie now either. Love it. Right. Let's get on with this book. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. Right, so it starts off with, okay, there's something bizarre going on, okay? Even without getting into those rumours, upset civilians in the seaports, deranged public mind, foreign land, and professional seamen were specifically alarmed. So something bad is happening in the sea, okay? Was it the Drew bot? I can't remember. Traders, ship owners, captains of vessels, skippers and master mariners from Europe and America, naval officers from every country, and at their heels the various national governments on these two continents, because they're clearly the only two continents that matter, Europe and America, were all extremely disturbed by the business. In essence, and actually this is good for Jules Verne, he's cutting to the chase. In essence, here's the thing. Over a period of time, several ships had encountered an enormous thing. Roald Dahl, of course, would have called it a fat thing. At sea, a long spindle-shaped object, sometimes giving off a phosphorescent glow, infinitely bigger and faster than any whale. Okay. An enormous thing at sea. So the enormous thing. Yeah. And I like the way it's written here. The irrelevant data on this apparition, this is very 19th century, isn't it? As recorded in various logbooks, agreed pretty closely as to the structure of the object or the creature in question, its unprecedented speed of movement, its startling locomotive power, and the unique vitality with which it seemed to be gifted. If it was a cetacean, it exceeded in bulk any whale previously classified by scientists. And then some names which presumably we're supposed to be impressed with. If it was no naturalist, neither Cuvier nor, I can't even pronounce this one, La Cepede, neither Professor Dumerel nor Professor de Quatrefages would have accepted the existence of such a monster sight unseen, specifically unseen by their own scientific eyes. So whatever this thing is, it's quite weird. Object is about 200 feet long. So for Americans, that's 200 feet. Okay. For anybody not familiar with feet, it's probably about 80 meters. Okay. And ignoring those exaggerated views, saw it as a mile wide and 3 long. Well, obviously they're idiots. You could assert this phenomenal creature greatly exceeded the dimensions of anything known to ichthyologists, if it existed at all. And then it gets a bit 19th century again, right? And goes goes on a bit. And so basically, this whatever it is seen a number of times. It also has 2 water spouts coming out of it, which is obviously a bit unusual. And then it's seen in the Pacific Seas on July the 23rd. And then it's noted that it was able to move positions in 3 days by like 700 nautical leagues, which we now know is like 1,400, maybe 1,500 miles, right? 15 days later and 2,000 leagues further, another ship picks it up. And we even get latitude, we even get latitude and longitude, so all sorts of stuff. And from simultaneous, because basically there's 2 ships, the Helvetia, which sounds like a font of all knowledge. Sorry. And the Shannon from the Royal Mail Line. So a French ship and a British ship, by the sound of it, running an opposing tacks were seen. Boom, boom. Yeah, sorry. Is that the twin water spouts? Well, I think they were both in the same area at the same time, respectively signalled to each other that the monster had been sighted here and here. And from their simultaneous observations, they were able to determine the animal's minimum length at more than 350 English feet. So none of that pesky American feet rubbish. This is proper stuff. This is English feet. And this was because both the Shannon and the Helvetia were of smaller dimensions, though each measured 100 metres from stem to stern. Okay, so that's about 300 feet long, the ships. And so the whatever this thing is, it's bigger than the 2 ships. So for some bizarre reason, Verne is switching from feet to meters and back in his own doc. Interesting enough, there. Author's note about 106 meters. An English foot is only 30 centimeters, as opposed to what other kind of feet are there? I don't know. I've never come across a foot that is not 30.4 centimeters, but maybe somebody will enlighten me as to other types of fit. J09, you're quite right. All the sailors in Jules Verne's novel seem to be quite dumb, don't they? They're going, well, clearly, until we're convinced otherwise, it's some sort of a strange animal. So anyway, so more and more reports, because obviously, in the pre-internet days, it takes a while for this sort of information to come around, and information is scarce. Everyone assumes it's a monster. Okay. In every big city, the monster was the latest rage. They sang about it in the coffee houses, they ridiculed it in the newspapers, and they dramatised it in the theatres. Tabloids found it a fine opportunity for hatching all sorts of hoaxes. And in those days, short of copy, you saw the reappearance of every gigantic imaginary creature from Moby Dick, a stupendous kraken. They even reprinted reports from ancient times, and so on and so forth. So, so the chattering classes of 19th century of Europe and America are all kind of excited by this. Now, this business about hoaxes is actually quite interesting, because the tabloids found it a fine opportunity for hatching all sorts of hoaxes. They did do that at the time. There was a great hoax done in, I think I'm right in saying, the Sun newspaper, that there were in fact life had been found on the moon, and it was printed in all seriousness in several versions of the paper for quite some length of time, until they eventually admitted no, it wasn't true. But it's the sort of stuff that slightly irresponsible 19th century journalists did. It's like making stuff up. I mean, they don't. Newspapers don't do anything like that today, fortunately. So there we go. Anyway, interesting. A little call out there to Moby Dick, which of course is a novel a little bit older, which is actually a really, 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 really hard novel to read. only gets good in the last couple of chapters, in my opinion. So there we go. Read that one. It's a famous novel, but it's hard work. Anyway, so so everybody's arguing about it, okay. Until eventually they basically say, okay, it's definitely some sort of sea creature, right? And then that's it. And they're not sure. And then it's kind of like, okay, well, now it was no longer an issue of scientific problem to be solved, but quite real and serious danger to be avoided. Okay, because somebody crashes into it. On March the 5th, 1867, the Moravian from the Montreal Ocean Company, those good Canadian sailors, lying during the night. Okay, so the ship was at rest, right? Ran its starboard quarter afoul of a rock. That's a very 19th century sort of way of putting things. It ran its starboard quarter afoul of a rock. It hit something on the right hand side. Which was not marked on the chart. Okay, under the combined effort of wind and 400 horsepower of steam, it was travelling at the speed of 13 knots. Okay, so it was moving. Sorry, that's interesting. It says it's lying during the night, and it was actually moving. Okay, travelling at the speed of 13 knots, pretty damn fast. Without the high quality of its hull, the Moravian would have surely been split open from this collision and gone down altogether with 237 passengers. It was bringing back from Canada. So it was a sort of liner, and it hit something on the starboard side. Happened about 5 o'clock in the morning. The officers on watch rushed to the craft's stern. And they examined the ocean with the most scrupulous care. They saw nothing but a strong eddy current, 3 cable lengths out, which we decided was a few hundred metres. Site's exact bearings were taken, and the Moravian continued on course, apparently undamaged. When they examined its undersides and the service yard, they discovered that part of its keel had been smashed. Okay, so they hit something, which is the thing. So this occurrence, extremely serious in itself, might have perhaps been forgotten if 3 weeks later it hadn't been reenacted under identical conditions. Thanks to the nationality of the ship victimised by this new ramming, and thanks to the reputation of the company to which the ship belonged, the event caused an immense uproar. Anyway, so basically, it was fine all the time it wasn't a British ship. And now a British ship has been hit by this thing. It's serious, okay? So, it's a Cunard ship, for goodness sakes. In 1840, this shrewd industrialist found a postal service between Liverpool and Halifax. We had a 400 horsepower paddle wheels and 1,000 etc. Anyway, so huzzah for British shipbuilding. Anyway, so eventually another collision occurred. Okay. It hadn't run afoul of something. It had been fouled by a cutting or perforating instrument rather than a blunt one. The encounter seemed so minor that nobody aboard would have been disturbed by it had it not been for the shouts of the crewmen in the hold who climbed up on deck yelling, "We're sinking!" Very irresponsible thing for sailors to say. At first the passengers were quite frightened. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're on a ship in the middle of the Atlantic, okay, and you're strolling around on the deck with your parasol and your top hat, as you do when you're on an ocean voyage, and the crew in front of you, you see these two gents who've just climbed out of the bows of the ship. They're clearly part of the crew, okay, and they shout out, "We're sinking!" I'm not sure, quite frightened. It's quite enough, to be honest. Anyway, but Captain Anderson hastened to reassure them. In fact, there could be no danger. Divided into 7 compartments by watertight bulkheads, the Scotia would brave any leak with impunity. This is written before 1912. When it was discovered that watertight compartments don't always work. As far as you might expect them to, but there we go. Anyway, Captain Anderson heads down to the hold and he finds the fifth compartment had been invaded by the sea. Or basically there was a leak, a lot of water down there. The speed of this invasion proved the leak was considerable. It's very undramatic, isn't it? Now, if this was being written today, it would be, "We're sinking! Panic! Shouts, captain yelling orders, etc., etc., etc." Fortunately, this compartment didn't contain the boilers because their furnaces would have been abruptly extinguished. Actually, it's worse than that. If you on a steamship and water gets into one of the boiler rooms, that's very bad indeed, because the cold water hitting the hot boiler basically causes them to implode, which doesn't do the rest of the ship any good either. So Captain Anderson called an immediate halt. One of his sailors dived down to assess the damage, and within moments they had located the hole. This is quite impressive. Within moments, they had located the hole 2 meters in width. I'm surprised that they're talking about flooding, because if a 2 meter hole in a ship, the water's going to be coming in virtually instantaneously. But there we go. I read a book stating that the idea that the Titanic was only unsinkable only entered the public consciousness after the sinking. How big is the hole in feet? Lots of feet. That's a 6-foot hole we're talking about there. Such a leak could not be patched. No, it can't. With its paddle wheels half swamped, the Scotia had no choice but to continue its voyage. As it lay 300 miles from Cape Clear, and after 3 days of delay, it eventually entered the company docks. And then here comes the interesting bit. Okay, the engineers inspect the Scotia, which is put in dry dock, and they can't believe their eyes. 2.5 meters below the waterline, there gaped a symmetrical gash in the shape of an isosceles triangle. This breach in the sheet iron. It wasn't just a wooden ship. This was a sheet iron ship. A sheet iron ship. Having speed. Yeah. It was so perfectly performed, no punch could have done a cleaner job of it. Consequently, it must have been produced by a perforating tool of uncommon toughness. Plus, after being launched with prodigious power and then piercing 4 centimeters of sheet iron, this tool had needed to withdraw itself by a backward motion, truly inexplicable. Okay, so this is the last straw. A British ship has been hit by this thing. It's not acceptable. Okay. It's still an animal for some bizarre reason, even though it's able to penetrate 4 inches of sheet iron. This outrageous animal had to shoulder responsibility for all derelict vessels. Okay, so everything that's sunk ever is now the fault of this creature. This outrageous animal had to shoulder responsibility for all derelict vessels, whose numbers are unfortunately considerable, since out of those 3,000 ships whose losses are recorded annually at the Marine Insurance Bureau, the figure for steam or sailing ships supposedly lost of all hands in the absence of news amounts to at least 200. I mean, we're losing ships all the time. It's clearly this animal's fault. Interesting enough, I used to work years ago. Now this is interesting, and I was a bit miffed by this translation at this point. It says that the Marine Insurance Bureau. Okay. Now, in my book, and I feel correctly, it says, I don't know if you could see that. It says recorded at Lloyd's, right? Recorded at Lloyd's. Now Lloyd's, I used to work at Lloyd's, and Lloyd's is one of the oldest companies in the UK. Technically, it's not a company, actually. It's a corporation, which is one of the oldest organisations in the UK that's still trading under its original name. And it was founded on, I think, 1688 or something. And it's basically, without going into too complicated things, it's basically an insurance company that made its name insuring ships. And it was definitely, and it's still in business today, and it still insures some ships. But it certainly insured ships in this era of time, and it also it almost went bust, actually, because it underwrote the Titanic, which wasn't a good call. More recently, it nearly went bust in the 80s because it underwrote a whole bunch of investment in what was that stuff in the doors and things, the asbestos. So that wasn't good news either. But it's an insurance organisation, let's put it that way, that's been running for almost 350 years. So it's got a lot of history. I worked there for 10 years. Very interesting place. Lots and lots of history. Lloyd's was the place where you went to get your ship insured in this era of time. So it wasn't just the Marine Insurance Bureau, as correctly written in my book. It was Lloyd's of London, it's called. Okay, and you can still go and find out. And yours truly used to work there. So there we go. So this thing, another bit of history for you. So anyway, so all the ships that are going missing, and there were a lot, and actually Lloyd's keeps a record even to this day. So obviously everything's done electronically nowadays. Can you still insure a ship? You can insure a ship with Lloyd's. Lloyd's specialises in specialist insurance. So if you can't if you want, basically what Lloyd's does is basically, if you want to insure something odd or big or really, really expensive, or just, insure something that nobody else insures, you go to Lloyd's and say, look, I need to insure this thing. Can you help me insure it? And Lloyd's will find a way to make it happen. Okay. So, for example, the space shuttle was insured with Lloyd's of London. So, if you lost your space shuttle, then Lloyd's of London was the only insurance broker who would give you coverage on the space shuttle. And it was pretty damned expensive insurance, I expect. They insured the Titanic. Lots and lots of ships are insured through Lloyd's of London. People's singing voices are insured through Lloyd's of London. Sportsmen's physiques are insured through Lloyd's of London. They do weird stuff. Okay. Did I go through the historical records at Lloyd's and find out if anything had get hit by the Nautilus? Nothing was written down as far as I was aware. But it is true to say that an awful lot of ships were lost in this era. They just were. They weren't up to the job of getting across the Atlantic reliably. So an awful lot of ships were lost in the 19th century. So, we don't know precisely why, but most commonly just storms or metal fatigue or bad craftsmanship or whatever happens. But a lot of ships were lost. Okay, a lot of ships were lost. Lloyd's still to this day, actually, although everything's electronic, when a ship is insured at Lloyd's, it's entered into a book, a massive leather-bound book, and they keep this on a pedestal in the main foyer of Lloyd's. There's this huge kind of auditorium place in the middle of the building just called the Room, and it's very impressive. And they have these books on display. They have the current one in which whenever a ship sinks, they write down using, and I kid you not, quill and ink. Quill, a feather quill. They have to have people specially trained to do it, and special ink that will last 200 years. They write down in this book, that the ship has sunk, and what they do is they have the current book on display, and they have the book from the 100 years, exactly 100 years before, next to it as kind of a reference copy. And the handwriting in the two books is exactly the same, because the people who do it are taught specifically how to do the handwriting for Lloyd's of London. It's cool and weird traditions like that kind of make the place. They also ring a bell. Yeah, there's a bell in Lloyd's of London called the Lutein Bell, which is mostly rung only on special occasions, or when there's been a major tragedy of loss of life. So it's rung on the Queen's birthday, for example. It's rung on Remembrance Day on the 11th of November, and it's rung when there's a major calamity in the world, or a ship sinks or something like that. So it's anyway, so that's the advert for Lloyd's of London. I used to work there, so it was a fascinating place for me because I love all that sort of history anyway, and working for an organisation actually kept alive some of its history from all those years ago, and it's still there today. You can go occasionally into Lloyd's building. It's open, I think, once a year to the public. So if you do get a chance, it's worth a visit. So it's unrealistic they're trying to write it the same. More likely the people who write it are immortal. It could be. Anyway, so getting back to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Chapter 2. Okay, so basically, right, chapter 1 ends up with, basically, we've got to get rid of this monster. Deal with it. purge the sea of this fearsome sedation. Okay, so right then we start to get introduced to our characters. Okay, so whilst this was going on, I had returned the narrator here, and we are introduced to our man. He is the assistant professor at the museum, Paris Museum of Natural History, which basically means he's a scientist. Okay, he spent 6 months in Nebraska for reasons that aren't entirely clear. Okay, so I had been attached to this expedition by the French government, and had spent 6 months in Nebraska. Okay, what job is there for a French assistant professor in Nebraska for 6 months in the 19th century? I don't know. Okay. But anyway, that struck me as a bit odd. Anyway, so he was classifying his stuff when the incident took place with the Scotia. Anyway, so he's been reading the newspapers, and he gets to New York, and everyone's basically saying, well, how can this monster be doing all this thing? And how could it move about? And if it wasn't a monster, was it a reef? But how could a reef move about? Etc. 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 So eventually, a bit of scientific rigor comes through. Only two possible solutions to the question are left, creating two very distinct groups of supporters. So on the one hand, we have the monster of colossal strength, and on the other, those favouring an underwater boat of tremendous motor power. Okay, so and in classic Jules Verne style, he goes at great lengths to diss the obvious theory, right? So now then, although the latter hypothesis was completely inadmissible, despite being the most obvious one, it couldn't stand up to inquiries conducted in both the New World and the Old. That a private individual had built such a mechanism at its disposal was less than probable. Well, yes, I'd probably go along with agreeing that. But where did it... Why did somebody come up with the idea of it being a private individual, despite the fact we know it's true? But only some government could own an engine of destruction. That seems most sensible. And in these disaster-filled times, when men taxed their ingenuity to build increasingly powerful and aggressive weapons, it was possible that, unknowns to the rest of the world, some nation could have been testing such a fearsome machine. Interesting observation, that one. In these disaster-filled times. I mean, we tend to look back... probably with a bit of rose-tintedness at the early times, thinking, well, this is pre the World Wars, so it can't have been all that bad. But clearly, Jules Verne thought it was. Did Lloyd's insure Satan to enable him to travel at such speeds? Well, oddly enough, not Satan himself, but the first... here's a little bit of Lloyd's history. I might chuck a few of these anecdotes in because I know them off by heart, because I used to give tours at Lloyd Building when I was there. The first car to ever be insured was insured by Lloyd's of London. Okay, but they didn't have any insurance documents, right, to cover cars. It hadn't been insured before, so the boys and girls at Lloyd's of London at the time, we only insure boats. So I don't know how we're going to cover this. What does this thing do? It's a car. What does it do? Well, it navigates on land. Does it? Okay then. So the first ever car insurance document states, and I kid you not, boat. It basically states first ever car insurance document states ship navigating on land. That's what it says. I kid you not. That is the first ever car insurance document. Says ship navigating on land. So there you go. Back to 20,000 underwriters under the sea. Right. Anyway, so the rifle led to the torpedo, and the torpedo has led to the underwatering battering ram, which will turn to lead the world to put its foot down. This hypothesis of a war machine collapsed in the face of formal denials from the various governments, because yes, in the moment government denies something, clearly it's not true, right? So, besides, how could the assembly of this underwater boat have escaped public notice? Well, governments can keep secrets, you know. But anyway, apparently not. Anyway, so after inquiries conducted in England, France, Russia, Prussia, that dates it, Spain, Italy, America, and even Turkey. Those cheeky Turkish types inventing underwater submarines without telling us. The hypothesis of an underwater monitor was ultimately rejected. I think monitor there is referring to an ironclad ship of some kind. Some history buff on the channel will know. Anyway, so we're back to thinking it's a monster. Anyway, so you know, our man has written several books on the ocean. He's a wild. Yeah. Okay. So it was an American ship in the American Revolution. Okay. I thought it was an ironclad of some kind or something like that. Anyway, so we're introduced to his name, the Honourable Pierre Aronnax, professor at the Paris Museum. Anyway, so he's basically summoned. Right. Well, you're an expert. You tell us what this thing is. And he does. Therefore, I wrote, having examined the different hypotheses one by one, full marks for the correct use of the word hypothesis there, we are forced, every other supposition having been refuted, to accept the existence of an extremely powerful marine animal. We don't know what lives down in the bottom of the sea, so that's clearly what it is. And so on and so forth. So anyway, so quite a lot of talking about marine animals now. Narwhal, sea unicorns, or the same thing. So if you take a narwhal and you enlarge it 5-fold or 10-fold, and then give that cetacean the strength in proportion to its size, you have the animal we're looking for. Okay, so basically the working theory now is that it's an overgrown narwhal, which is capable of ramming ships for reasons. Right then, imagine this weapon to be 10 times stronger than the animal, 10 times more powerful. Launch it at a speed of 20 miles an hour, multiply its mass times its velocity. I mean, he's doing some science here. This is good stuff. Okay. Multiply its mass times its velocity. In fact, it's multiply its mass times its velocity squared. If you want to do the science spot on. And you get just the collision we need to cause a specific catastrophe. Okay. So until more information becomes abundant, I plump for a sea unicorn, as they call narwhals, of colossal dimensions, no longer armed with a mere lance, but with an actual spur, like ironclad frigates or those warships called rams, whose mass and motor power it would possess simultaneously. And then he kind of covers his ass here. This inexplicable phenomenon thus explained away, unless it's something else entirely, which, despite everything that has been cited, studied, explored, and experienced, is still possible. At least he comes clean here. These last words were cowardly of me, but as far as I could, I wanted to protect my professorial dignity and not lay myself open to laughter from the Americans. Those pesky Americans laughing at me. Who... This is quite funny as well. Who, when they do laugh raucously. So, consider yourselves told off, Americans. You laugh too much. When you laugh raucously. I don't want any raucous laughing on this stream. Thank you very much. You pipe down at the back, okay? Dear. I had left myself a loophole, yet deep down I had accepted the existence of the monster. Dear. Right. It's like, I mean, Jules Verne has a thing for Americans, actually, I think. He was complaining about the Americans last week in Masters of the World, where those Americans, when somebody dies, they don't care. Plenty more Americans to take their place. It's like, really? I think Jules Verne had a bit of a problem with Americans. I don't know. What do you think? I laugh at you all raucously, says Glenn. What is a raucous laugh anyway? Is it like just really loud? So he was French. That excuses everything. Yep, he was French. My article was hotly debated, causing a fine old uproar. So, you know, Hashtag controversy in the 19th century. Anyway, so more stuff about, it could be a monster, surely, because we don't know what's down there, right? So that's quite good. Some people thought it was a scientific problem to be solved. More practical people, especially in American England, where clearly all the practical people live. It's very, very slightly racist here, isn't it? More practical people, especially in England and America, are determined to purge the ocean of this daunting monster to ensure the safety of transoceanic travel. Oh, here we go. Lloyd's is back here. More underwriting for you. The industrial and commercial newspapers dealt with the question chiefly from this viewpoint. The Shipping and Mercantile Gazette, the Lloyd's List, still exists, the Lloyd's List, France's Packet Boat and Marine and Colonial Review, that's a very snappy title, and all the ranks devoted to insurance companies who threatened to raise their premiums. Yeah, that's exactly what they would do. We're unanimous on this point. Well, you see, travelling across the Atlantic, are you? Well, sorry, we're going to have to slap on monster tax. Narwhal waivers. Are you prepared to sign the narwhal waiver? What about the sea unicorn addendum? You quite happy? Dear, quite funny. Anyway. Public opinion being announced. The States of the Union were the first in the field, right? So the Americans just basically go out with a frigate, armed to the teeth. So he's Jules Verne here, preempting every kind of action move there's ever been, right? When basically the Americans get their guns out and go, "Oh, we'll sort it out." The Americans have a plan. It's about bloody time too. So yes, the American solution to the problem is send out a frigate and let's see if we can blow it up. And not just any frigate. They send out a frigate called the Abraham Lincoln. The naval arsenals were unlocked for Commander Farragut, who pressed energetically forward with the arming of his frigate, because he knows a good thing when he's got one. Okay, let's get this frigate armed to the teeth and go out and hunt some stuff. But as it always happens, does it? Does it always happen? Just when the decision has been made to chase the monster put in no further appearances. For 2 months, nobody heard a word about it. Not a single ship encountered it. Apparently the unicorn had gotten wise to these plots being woven around it. Now, gotten isn't an English word, that's an American word. So quite why it's in this translation, I'm not sure. People were constantly babbling about the creature, even via the Atlantic cable. Which is effectively the 19th century internet. Accordingly, the wags claim this slippery rascal had waylaid some passing telegram and was making the most of it. Okay, so the sea monster has intercepted the telegram cables and gone, aha, they're after me, I'm going to hide. So the frigate was equipped for a far-off voyage and armed with fearsome fishing gear, but nobody knew where to steer it. And then, eventually, the animal was sighted again somewhere in the northerly seas of the Pacific. It's not the Pacific, the Pacific. The news caused intense excitement. Not even a 24-hour breather was granted to Commander Farragut. His provisions were loaded on boards, his coal bunkers were overflowing, not a crewman was missing for his post. Cast off, he needed only to fire and stoke his furnaces. Half a delay's delay would have been unforgivable. But Commander Farragut wanted nothing more than to go forth. And I received a letter 3 hours before the Abraham Lincoln left its Brooklyn pier. The letter read as follows. Per Aronnax, Professor. Sir, if you would like to join the expedition on the Abraham Lincoln, the government of the Union will be pleased to regard you as France's representative in this undertaking. Commander Farragut has a cabinet at your disposal. Very cordially yours, J.B. Hobson, Secretary of the Navy. Dun, dun, dun. So yes, they called it a unicorn, which seems to be 19th century for narwhal. Okay, so we'll do chapter 3, and then we might have to. We have been a little bit delayed by Roald Dahl and Lloyd's of London this evening, but for which I apologise. But anyways, it's all good stuff. It's going well. It's a good book. It's a good book. 3 seconds, very, very specific, 3 seconds before the arrival of the letter, I had no more dreamed of chasing the unicorn than the trying for the Northwest Passage. 3 seconds after reading this letter from the Secretary of the Navy, I understood that at last my true vocation, my sole purpose in life, was to hunt down this disturbing monster and rid the world of it. He's not a man to, prevaricate a lot of the time, is Mr. Aronnax. So, but what to do? He hasn't catalogued his collections yet. Nobody mentioned Lloyd's again. Can't make any promises. So nothing would hold me back. I forgot everything else. I accepted the American government's offer. Anyway, so he calls for Consul. And Consul is his manservant. And he's described as a devoted lad who went with me on all my journeys. A gallant Flemish boy. So Flemish is Dutch, or from Holland. Whom I genuinely liked. And who returned the compliment. So they like each other. That's nice, isn't it? Born stoic, punctilious on principle, habitually hard-working, rarely startled by life surprises, and very skillful with his hands, efficient in every duty, and despite having a name that means counsel, never giving advice. Not even the unsolicited kind. Interesting description. Anyway, so he'd been with him for the last 10 years. So the lad was 30 years old. Not exactly a lad, is he? And his age to that of his employer was as 15 is to 20, right? So please forgive me this underhanded way of admitting I turned 40. It's a slightly curious thing. Is it Belgium? Sorry, Lucky Luigi. Oh yeah, it is, isn't it? Flemish is Belgium, isn't it? So you're quite right. Getting my Europeans mucked up. So we now know Professor Aronnax is 40. He doesn't know he's born. Professor Aronnax. And Consul is 30. Okay, there we go. Honorary Dutch. Yeah, you're Belgium. Well, you can't say Belgish, so you say Flemish for reasons somebody will probably dig into at some point. Consul had one flaw. He was a fanatic on formality, and he only addressed me in the third person, to the point where it got tiresome. Consul, I repeated. And a third time. Did Master summon me? He said. His Consul is quite good. He's very laid back, very chilled, this Consul. Yes, my boy, get my things ready. Get yours ready. We're departing in 2 hours. As Master wishes. Whatever. That's absolutely fine. He's totally phlegmatic about it, totally laid back. You can't say Belgium. Haven't you read Hitchhikers? Yeah. Flemish are the Dutch-speaking Belgians. Oh, that's why the Dutch thing came through to my head. That's why. What about Master's collections? We'll deal with them later. And then a whole bunch of unpronounceable words. Right. We're going to... I like this. What about the things, and the Master's other things? Oh, well, the hotel will keep them for us. What about Master's live other thing? They'll feed it during our absence. Can you imagine that today? You're a professor of natural history with a bunch of massive crates of fossils and a whole bunch of live specimens, and you check into the Hotel Grand. And you have to leave on urgent business and just say to the hotel concierge, there's a bunch of monkeys and reptiles and iguanas and things in my room, if you wouldn't just mind feeding them for me. When are you coming back? I don't know. Could be weeks, could be months. If you could just feed them for me, that'd be great. Thank you. Bye. I don't know how hotels worked in the 19th century. They were clearly much better than the ones we have today. That's quite fun. Anyway, right, so we're off to catch this narwhal. Okay. and it's a glorious mission, but also a dangerous one. Now this is a bit of kind of dodgy editing by modern standards. Exclamation mark. Glorious mission! Exclamation mark. Don't know where it will take us. Glorious expedition! Exclamation mark. Unpredictable! Exclamation mark. We're going just the same! Exclamation mark. Commander is game for anything! Exclamation mark. What Master does, I'll do, Console replied. He's just totally chilled. He's probably on something, I would guess. But there we go. Think it over. I don't want to hide anything from you. It's one of those voyages from which people don't always come back. Excitement builds. As Master wishes. It's fine with me, sir. Anyway, so here's some good words. The hotel elevator dropped us off in the main vestibule on the mezzanine. Words that you don't often see nowadays. The vestibule on the mezzanine, i.e. the front part of the floor that isn't the ground floor. That's what that means. So I left instructions for shipping my containers of stuffed animals and dried plants to Paris, and I opened. Oh, there we go. So this is how he's basically got the hotel to sort things out. I opened a line of credit sufficient to cover the Barbarossa and jumped into a garage. Somehow managed to arrange a bank loan or something at the hotel to cover food arrangements for all his livestock. Anyway, so they get to the ship. Our baggage is immediately carried on board, and he's led to the commander Farragut. Welcome aboard, Professor. Your cabin is waiting for you. Here we get a nice technical description of the frigate. The Abraham Lincoln had been perfectly chosen and fitted for its new assignment. It was a high-speed frigate, furnished with superheating equipment, which allowed the tension of its steam to build to 7 atmospheres. Under this pressure, the Abraham Lincoln reached an average speed of 18.3 miles per hour. A considerable speed, but not enough to cope with our gigantic cetacean. Superheating basically is where you do something clever to the steam to make it even more powerful. But I can't remember what the exact technicalities are. Somebody will know. The frigate's interior accommodations complemented its nautical virtues. I was well satisfied with my cabin, which was located in the stern and opened into the officer's mess, so near the food. Excellent. Constable is entirely happy with this. Anyway, so they cast off from Brooklyn Pier. Are we up to pressure, he asked. Go ahead then. So anyway, the ship is off, and the blades of propeller. We've gone past paddle steamers. Now we're onto propellers. Churn the waters with increasing speed, and the Abraham Lincoln moved out majestically. Off it goes into the Hudson River, long peninsula that forms New York City. A bunch of boats escorted them out. The harbour pilot goes along, gets them round the corner, and at 8 o'clock in the evening, after the lights of Fire Island had vanished into the northwest, we ran at full steam, bum, 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 into the dark waters of the Atlantic. There we go. Superheated steam is an extremely high temperature vapour generated by heating the saturated steam obtained by boiling water. And Alan says superheated steam is above its saturation temperature, which is the temperature at which it can turn back into a liquid. Excellent. Neither of those two explanations help me in the slightest, but hopefully they make some sense to somebody else. Anyway, there we go. That's probably a good place to stop. We've got Consul and we've got Professor Aradex. We've got a frigate. We're off to go monster hunting with Jules Verne. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed that introduction to this. It's a fun adventure story. Just wait till you get started on the diving science. Yes, that's coming, isn't it? That's it, lads. We've done it. We're off. The Americans have got a battleship, and we're off to go and fight the monster. So it's all good stuff. But it's a good adventure story so far. I mean, it's good enough. Here's another little thing that dates it a little bit, which is funny. The Abraham Lincoln replied 3 times, lowering and hoisting the American flag, whose 39 stars gleamed from the gaff of the mizzen sail 39 stars. How many stars have you got now? I mean, that's a question that all Americans should know, just like that, right? I don't. How many stars on the American flag today? I'm assuming it's quite a lot more than 39 now. It's 50, is it? Right, there we go. 50 stars. There we go. Brilliant. Well done. I knew I could count on our resident Americans to help with that. 50 states. Excellent. So there we go. Right, so we're off. There's the adventure. Come back next week and we'll be introduced to more characters, and then hopefully the identity of the strange, mysterious cetacean monster will be revealed. Bam, bam, bam. Tune in next time, folks, for more exciting adventures in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Anyway, my friends, have yourself... Oh, and probably some Lloyd's anecdotes as well. Have yourself a fantastic week ahead. Look after yourselves. I will see you next Monday for more adventures under the sea. Not that we've got under the sea yet, but we will, I'm sure. So on and so forth. I won't be here on Thursday, I'm afraid. I've got a meal out with some friends, so I won't be able to do my No Man's Sky stream on Thursday. But Friday we'll be out with Star Citizen, and then I'm not quite sure what's happening on Saturday yet. We might be cooking up something slightly different for the Saturday morning stream, just because an opportunity has arisen, which we'll see how it goes. But we'll be back here regardless next Monday. So keep reading, my friends. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and we will continue to explore the possibilities that are afforded to us. We certainly can be ensured of that. We can. Take care, my friends. Be good. See you soon, and look after yourselves. Have a good week ahead. Right on, as always.